things happen. I'm Hanisha Lalwani. Welcome to my show.
My guest today is Asim Burney. If you're an avid podcast listener and also follow Indian cinema, Asim's name will definitely ring a bell. I, like millions of other listeners, know Asim from his widely popular show called The Khandan Podcast, which he co-hosts with his close friends in cinema fields, Amrita and Sujoy. In today's episode, I will be exploring his podcasting journey, of course. But beyond that, Asim is a managing director of Digital Age Research Limited. It's a full service market research agency based in London that he founded more than a decade ago. Asim's personable and genuine character makes him a really natural networker and great at sales, skills that have served him well in business and life. Join me in learning how Asim makes things happen. Asim, one sunny day in October of 2021, I remember I was riding the metro in Dubai and I was listening to the Khandan podcast, your show, for the very first time. And I was sat there in the metro laughing my head out. That doesn't happen very often. Fast forward to a year, and I attended your first podcast meetup in person in London. And it was like meeting an old friend, even though I was seeing you and Sujoy and Amrita for the very first time. So it really feels fantastic today to actually turn the tables and have you as a guest on my podcast. I would have never imagined this, but it's just been such a lovely journey listening to you, listening to your friends speak about Indian cinema through your podcast. So thank you for joining me, Asim.
No, thank you for inviting me. It's kind of odd to be sitting on this side of the interview chair. This rarely happens. I think last time it was happening was when my daughter was doing a school project and she had some questions for me. Usually, I'm the one asking the questions. And also, I can also say we might feel like friends, but I think since we met up in London, we have actually become friends. So that's also the cool
Yes.
part about podcasting.
No, it's amazing.
So yeah, I was very excited when you started a podcast. I feel we are partly inspiring people to have these conversations, and I think that's amazing. It makes me so happy.
Indeed, indeed. You've definitely played a role, as have my other podcaster friends have. So thank you for the work that you do and your consistency. It's very inspiring. Not many people know Asim, but you had a very diverse upbringing. You were born and raised in Belgium, I think. I don't know many South Asians who were raised in Belgium.
Yes.
I'm very interested to actually start our conversation by learning about your growing up years in Belgium.
Yes. I did grow up in Belgium. So my parents are from Pakistan. I think my dad tried to get established in Canada. He tried to get
Mm,
established in Germany. And I think that time it was easier to get established in Belgium. And then he just started a business there. He was quite successful there. And now he is
mm.
retired there. We were all
Wow.
raised in a very small coastal town. I think 10, 15,000 people, very quiet but very touristic. So during the summer
Mm,
we would have tons of people coming over from France, from Germany, from England. Even back in the day we used to have a ferry service between Dover and Bruges, I think.
right.
So a lot of football fans would come every Thursday and things like that. So it was quite a good time to kind of grow up. But yes,
Mm,
there are not many Belgians in Asians in Belgium. I think literally there were three families, and that was
wow.
it. So it was a very isolating experience. But I don't know, now looking, I think it was tough at that time, but
Mm,
looking back at it, it made me the person I am to a certain degree. I mean, like, not even a certain degree, like a large part of who I am
right.
is because of that isolation, finding your identity. And what I've also noticed, having a way to have your voice heard, which seemed
Mm.
to be a theme that's kind of really encompassed who I am as a person now. So yeah, have you ever been to Belgium?
I have been to Belgium. I have been to Bruges as well. It's a postcard picture, beautiful town. Um, but and Antwerp as well for like a
Yes.
couple of hours.
Yes.
So I liked what I saw, but I just could not imagine growing up there
Yeah.
so young. Yeah.
So it's funny because Belgium, Bruges, Antwerp, and Ghent, even, they're very kind of medieval cities, and they have a lot of that part. And I think what's funny with Belgium is it's a tiny country. It's like
Mm,
11 million people. It's between these big countries of Germany, UK, and France, and it doesn't have a clear national identity. Being
interesting.
Belgian doesn't mean much, but it
Mm,
is also a country that's split in a very strict language barriers. So you have the French side and you have the Dutch side, and they don't get along. Especially when I was growing up, that was kind of the rise of the Flemish far right movement that had started, kind of like partly of nationalism, kind of like a cultural nationalism that they were
yeah.
pushing.
Mm,
Um, but the funny part with Belgium is that because it's such a small country, it's a very good test market for market research. So if you want to launch a product in a very small radius, you have all of the infrastructure. So you have really good highways, you have a good distribution model for supermarkets, for companies like that. And you can also test different languages and how your message is going to be
wow.
perceived. And then you can use that knowledge in France, or you can use it in Holland, or adapt it to
Oh,
make it
how
more
interesting.
Germanic. So in a way, it was just a very interesting place to kind of grow up, and it also has you speak multiple languages.
Mm,
Because you don't have a culture and nationality, you kind of look for something else, and then adding that element of being, Pakistani, being a Muslim, you kind of try to find, where do I fit in?
yeah.
And I think that intellectual exercise is very interesting. And I think at that time we had the time and the space. We didn't have social media, so a lot of it was just, going to the library and, just reading books for 8 hours, 9 hours on end, and trying to find some connection with, race issues in America, and reading
Mm,
Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and then trying to figure out, where do I fit in, where do I stand. So yeah, I always say that isolation made me who I am.
that's fascinating. And I completely agree with that because I've had so many periods of my life where I have lived in isolation. I remember my master's degree in Melbourne. It was a very, very isolating time in my life, but very difficult during that period of time. But now that I look back, I feel like so much of my self reliance, my sense of self has come from those 2 years.
Mm.
So I completely understand that. And then you continue this intellectual exercise, I'm sure, because you then moved to London. Your sense of finding who you are, I'm sure that exercise continued when you moved here. What now, back in 2006, almost 18 years ago?
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while. It's always funny when you say, 18 years, you also realize how old you are, So I had a little stint in Paris. I worked there for a year and a
Mm,
half, around something like that, and then I did a stint in Amsterdam.
yeah,
And afterward, I came to London,
London.
which was always my destination. I always wanted to be in London, and I think in the last few years, London, or I mean, I would say Britain has been very tumultuous, but
Mm,
London has always felt home to me,
wow.
at least. And it's a feeling that I never really had in growing up in Belgium. So it was interesting that 18 years ago, what was I, like, late mid 20s, and that
Mm.
was the first time I landed somewhere, and I was like, oh, this actually feels like home, or the closest thing to what home might feel like.
And if I may ask, what made it feel like home? Like, how did you just know that this is a place I can see myself living in?
I think it was just the international liberal metropolitan aspect of London. I think everything that people outside of London and Britain hate about London is the thing that I love about London. It's the multiculturalism, this cosmopolitanism, the ability to just go and watch movies in your language in literally any theater. Like, I did not have that ability in
Wow,
Amsterdam. I couldn't do that in Paris,
that's
which are
true.
large cities. But
True.
London has this aspect, which I think there's only a few cities around the world that can offer that. And
Mm,
London is one of those. And just coming here, it was. I saw people like me. I saw people that think like me, that people that act like me, and that just felt. Let me tell you a story. When I was when we got married, very it was like the first few weeks. Me and my wife. My wife is French, by the way, and we went back home to Belgium, and we just walked into a Chinese restaurant for like a
Mm.
meal with the family. So it was like seven of us, seven Pakistanis, and then one white lady with us, my wife. We walk into this small restaurant in a coastal town in Belgium, and literally everybody went silent. The whole
Wow.
restaurant just went silent, and they didn't put a bite in their mouth until the whole family had sat down. So in that restaurant at that time, there were like basically those seven Pakistanis, the one white lady, and two Chinese people that were serving us. Everybody else was Belgian. And
Right.
it because I'd gone away, I'd kind of not been in Belgium for a while. I came back
Yes.
married. My wife was the one to point out, like, have you grown up like this? Like you
Wow.
walk into a space and people just stare at you. And it hit me.
Mm.
Yes, that's how I grew up. Like literally, if you go into a bakery, you go into a supermarket, you go into a fancy store, people will literally be staring you and following you where you're going,
Oh my
and you just get
gosh.
used to it. You build up so many defense mechanisms. You
Mm.
become a different person than you are because you're constantly feeling judged. You're an ambassador to your culture, you're an ambassador to your identity, to your religion. And in London, I could let go of all of
Wow.
that pressure on me, and
Yeah.
that's what I love so much about London.
I think there are so many things you've said there that I would not have thought about. Walking in your shoes. I think we take so many things for granted. And I agree with you. Like, London just lets you be who you are. There is diversity on a whole other level that I've experienced here. So now that you explained the context, I can understand why you felt this was home for you. Thank you for sharing that. And then now I want to like sort of segue into your career. What made you start your career in market research? What was that something you always knew? Like you seem like a very advertising kind of a guy to me, but like what
Yeah.
led to market research?
Yeah, I mean, I studied initially engineering like a good old Pakistani boy, wanted to be an engineer. Very quickly, I understood that that's not going to be. I could have been a chemical engineer. That could have been a different path I'd taken. I still
Yeah.
love math. I love
Oh my
chemistry and all of those
God.
things. I love it. I am a nerd. Um, but that didn't work out. So I ended up in marketing, which I think what Belgium is really good at in their
Hmm.
studies is that they're generalists. So they teach you so many and that funny enough didn't work for me in engineering because I just wanted to be interested in math and chemical engineering, but I also had to learn German, and I was like, this is
Right.
just not working for me. Whereas with marketing, when I was doing
Hmm.
that and I was doing international studies, they had a lot of market research, they had business management, sales, admin, all of these things that were like, all of this works for me. This is like the
Correct.
personality I fit in.
Hmm.
And at that time, I wanted to do advertising. That was a thing. My love of movies was already present then. So I was like, in a marketing, in advertising, you could tell a whole story in 40 seconds. And I just
Yeah.
love that concept.
Right.
So I got managed to get an internship in one of the best advertising agencies in Belgium at that time. Lovely people, really smart, and I figured out that it wasn't what I had thought it would be.
Mm.
And I tried to get an advertising job in London. I really, really tried, and it just didn't work out because I wasn't living here and things like that. And after a moment, it was very hard to find a job in Belgium because of
Right.
the racial dynamics and things
Of
that
course.
I've spoken
Yeah.
about earlier. It was quite bad back in the day.
Mm.
I always remember this number that I sent around 1,000 CVs,
Oh my
and
gosh.
I got 5 job interviews,
Mm.
uh, one of which was driving a van, and the
Oh,
second was door-to-door sales of electrical contracts. And I was like,
wow.
I've done like I've done my studies. This is not the kind of
Mm.
job I thought I would be getting, and these were literally the
My
only
gosh.
options. So I
Mm.
think I enlarged my pool of where I was applying, and a lovely lady in France got back to me, Juliette Massé. I thank her all the time still, and they wanted to have somebody deal with the Dutch and French market from the French office. And because I spoke French, I spoke English, I spoke Dutch, they brought me over for an interview.
Hmm.
My dad drove me. He was still he had his business, so he was doing some wholesale work in Paris. I thought an interview would last 30 minutes. The
Yeah.
interview lasted 6 hours. And my poor dad
What?
was just waiting in the car. Like, this is one of those, they see dad stories
Yeah,
that it's a job for my son. So they'll just wait in the car for 6 hours,
I know.
So, and I ended up getting the job. And I had, I'd studied market research, but I always make this joke that people that don't know what to do with their life either end up joining the army or market research. So I think I ended up in market research, and everybody that I spoke with, nobody has any intention to join market research, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. But the funny part is that I'm still in it. I still love, I
Wow.
do
Hmm.
feel I fell in love with the sector. And again, it appeals to this internationalism of mine, this generalism of mine. It's the thing is, you're moving from, a project on sneaker brands to
Hmm.
hotels to public policy, and sometimes you're doing them all at the same time. And that I just find fascinating, because my brain
Yeah.
just works in, it can get stimulation from all of these different topics. I just love it. I don't know if I could be as happy as I am if I was just doing banking and that was the only thing I was doing.
Right.
Not to say that
Right.
banking is interesting, I'm sure it is, but
Say that banking is, yeah, yeah. Not to say.
yeah.
um
So
and i
that's
and
how
i
I basically landed up in market research.
And I think also with research, there is that statistics, there is that love for maths that kind of sort of comes in, right? So
Yes.
I also have to say, I think the work that you do is so important because as marketers, we don't do a very good job of research.
Yes.
A lot of our campaigns, they desire more research based insights. So I think it's very important. We can call market research boring, we can call it dull, but it is so, so important.
It is, and I think it kind of goes hand in hand with these three things, right? It's advertising, marketing, and market research, right? And some companies don't understand it. They're like, why am I spending money
Yeah.
on this? And a lot of it is legacy businesses, either like the father started the business and then the son took it over and things are going well. Why should we change things, right? And the other part is certain businesses want a very analytical breakdown of numbers and
Hmm.
consumer behavior and things like that. So it's always about finding the customers that or the clients that get it. I rarely try to convince somebody of a point of view that they don't that is so far removed from them that they will never get it. I feel that's a waste of time for me. I don't have
Hmm.
that time. But the people that get it, I want to offer them a better solution. And that's
Right.
basically been my whole ethos on how to do things, is doing it in a nicer way, doing it in a knowledgeable way, and making their life basically easier and making those hard decisions. Launching, like we were talking, if you're launching your brand in 5 different markets and you're basically going on gut feeling, that's an
Hmm.
insane proposition to me. Like,
Hmm.
imagine if you're launching just a brand in Europe, and we get this a lot from our American clients. They'll say,
Hmm.
we want to do this project in Europe, and I'm like, what do you mean with Europe?
Yeah,
Scandinavia and Spain are completely different
completely different.
mentalities. So we need to break these things down. And I mean, if you don't run the analysis, if you don't know how you're making those decisions, it can backfire, and it can be a very, very big chance you're taking.
So you must be really, really passionate about what you do because you then went from, very stable jobs in Paris, Amsterdam, to then starting your own market research company,
Mm.
Digital Age Research Limited. So I don't know. I feel awe inspired by entrepreneurs. I think you need a huge risk appetite. You need to be so confident. My dad and my sisters are entrepreneurs, and I think that's the Sindhi gene I don't have in me. I am not a business person at all. I want to know. How did you move from some stability to having the courage to starting your own market research agency?
I think when I look back, I think this gene was in me. I think
Hmm.
because my dad is a business owner. He's always had business. So I could see how hard he worked. I could see, the discipline he had, and I could also see the ups and downs of it. So I knew what I was kind of getting into, and I understood that things go up, things go down. You can have a really good year, you can have a bad year, but the other thing is just keep working. Keep at it, and have that faith in yourself that what you are providing is a really good product or a really good
Mm.
solution to people, and the market will end up listening to you. Funnily enough, when I started digital age research, I had a certain pitch email I was sending, because the idea that we had was quite cutting edge at that time, especially for market research, which is it's a very conservative way of working. They don't always like new ideas, and if they
Mm.
get a new idea, they don't always know what to do with it.
Mm.
So our idea was so fresh that I was scoping out the market, like who's ready, who's not ready to take this project on.
Right.
And last week, I received an email from a new company, and I think they were based in India or in Philippines. And their pitch email was so similar to the pitch email I was sending 15 years ago. I was
Mm.
like, oh, the market has actually caught up with my idea of 15 years.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. But yeah, I think I always had it. And now
Mm.
that I think about it, even when I was doing that internship in Belgium, my mentor at that time says, Asim, you're great at what you're doing, but half of your brain is just in another market on other ideas. And, and like I remember that feedback, and now looking back at it, I was like, yeah, like there's always this part of me is like, we can do this better. And when you're part of a larger company, your idea of doing it better just takes so much time to get implemented, just because the decision making cycle is
Yeah.
so large. It needs to
Yeah.
go up, needs to go down. And we were working in a very flat structure. It wasn't that
Mm.
hierarchical, it was very collaborative, and still it would take ages
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
anything going. And at that time, funnily enough, like you're talking about risk, my wife was pregnant with our child, and
Oh.
that's when I made the decision of starting my own company. And funnily enough, it motivated me more than scaring me. um,
Mm.
and one thing I've also realized about me, and this is just maybe a personality trait, if anything scares me, I
Yeah.
run towards it.
Yeah.
I run towards it, and because I want to take away that fear.
Right.
So instead of hiding from it, I run towards it, and I think that's a good example of the moment where I was like, "Oh, what's going to happen with my future? How I'm going to feed this child
Mm.
that's coming?" I was like, "No, I will feed the child, or whoever's
Oh,
all the wishes that I have with me, all the prayers that I have with me, those will feed the child, and that's exactly what happened. And I'm very
amazing.
blessed and very lucky.
No, that I am sure those are words of encouragement to anyone thinking about starting something of their own. I remember listening to, was it on Oprah? I used to listen to a lot of Oprah before. And one of her guests said that the way they make decisions is if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. You know,
Mm,
if it's not a hell yes, I am excited, I am thrilled, I am scared, I want to do this, then it's a no.
yeah.
And that sort of phrase came to my mind when you were speaking about this. But what do you think have been the skills and experiences that have served you well now that it has been more than a decade since starting your business? Yeah, what do you say?
Skills. I don't know if I sometimes do wonder what skills I have, but I think l- I think listening, hearing people is always a good one. Like really. And this is a funny dynamic I learned when I was in France. The French love to talk, right? Like just generally, you'll see them at a table
Yes.
and like
Yeah.
having coffee and just talking for hours on end.
Yeah.
And coming as an outsider, I was part of conversations like that. You'll see it also on a lot of French TV. They'll have the table setting and five people will be discussing something, some idea. But I noticed something with the French is they're not talking to each other. They're waiting for their turn to talk once the other person is finished.
I see. There's a
And
difference. Yeah.
there's a difference between
Mm.
actually listening to what the other
Yeah.
person is saying than just waiting your turn and talking. And I think that's one of those things that I've also seen in sales, just generally. People are not always really listening to what the client or the prospect or anybody
Yeah.
is saying. Um, I try to do that. I try to at least try get to the core of what they're trying to say. And I think
Mm,
that's really helped me. I think really honestly believing in that what you're doing is going to make people's lives better. And I think back in the day when I was working my dad's shop, that was another thing I learned, which is probably the best experience I had, working in my dad's shop on the seaside, selling lipsticks and t-shirts and swimming trunks, because you're in a very non-diverse market. Like literally, you
yeah.
have 7 stores selling the same
Mm,
stuff. So
mm.
how are you then successful? You
Right,
don't, you
right.
can't market it. You can't compete on price, because it reaches a level after a while.
Correct.
So it really needs to be that it's a good experience for the people coming into your shop, that they are helped, that they don't feel embarrassed by something, and that you can speak in to them in their language, not necessarily
Mm,
language, but the way that they understand you. And those are really key skills that I took from that time, and I still apply now. Really listening and really believing that what I'm offering is a better solution to what you have now. And then also just having, again, the power of no also, right? Like if you have that discussion, you've listened, and you say, I cannot help you. The
mm.
solution you have is a better solution than mine. Then also be honest enough to say, no, I can't help you at the moment. Go with the supplier you're using. Do what you're doing. You're doing a great job. Again, maybe that's me just not trying to convince somebody who cannot be convinced. But I also believe in the power of no. If I cannot help a project, or if I can't help a client, I will let them know, because I don't want to take on the project and then fail, or then
Right.
not deliver, because I feel that's my name, that's what I've built on, and that's something that I refuse to lose.
Interesting. And I think also like a lot of marketers and salespeople can do a better job of really listening to their customers, understanding what are their pain points, what are their challenges, and then speak to them in that language. I think so much of pitching is all about who we are, what we do, what we've done. But no, start with understanding your customer, right? So I think a lot of my work also has been to kind of change that mindset about going from talking about who we are and our services to, well, let's talk about your problems, and then how can we, sort of cater to solving your problems. So I agree, that's a critical skill.
I also think a lot of times salespeople or whoever else, I think, and we were talking about this a bit earlier before we started recording, is that I think people hide behind the brand that they're working for,
Mhm.
and they identify themselves a bit too much with that brand. I think when you're an entrepreneur, you're the brand. So there's no hiding,
So
right?
yeah. Mm.
So if you are working for, an IBM, you pitch yourself like, this is IBM, so this is who I am. And I think it's good to kind of maybe able to separate that, like, okay, this is what we're offering, but this is who I am as a person, and this is how I'm going to deal with it. One thing that we do in our company is that I never hand over a client to anybody junior, or any junior team member. I handle all client relationships myself, because one of the things I saw is that you have a senior sales person come in, maybe even with a VP or something. They'll give a bells and whistles presentation. We're so
Yeah.
good. We do this. Client is convinced. They're sold. They like the idea. They've had a rapport with this person. As soon as the project come in, they shift it
Would
over to
disappear.
some
Yeah.
outsourced company somewhere else. And they only step back in when things are going badly, or like a yearly check-in. And that is not the relationship I wanted to have with my clients.
Mm.
I'm really looking for longer term partnerships. But again, it's a how scalability works. I understand, like obviously
Correct.
certain
Yeah.
companies cannot do that.
Yeah.
But that's not the kind of company I want to build. So I
Mm.
think that's something that I kind of hold true to myself, that the brand is me, so I'd better deliver.
Lovely. And can we just sort of deep dive a bit more into your skills as a salesperson? What code have you cracked? Because people consider sales as a very aggressive, it's all about the numbers. It's very hardcore. Like, what can you tell people about what it's actually like to be a good salesperson? You're very passionate about selling.
Mm.
Can we talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it's again kind of about conveying the idea, right, behind it more than that product. People, I mean, I've seen all kinds of salespeople, to be honest. I've seen all kinds. I've seen people that are proper sharks, they can go
Mm,
after a sales target, they get their bonus, they triple it, all of that. I've seen that. I've seen really nice account managers that they have a really good relationship with the three, four clients that they manage. They're not able to pitch the product. They're not able to, stand at a booth and tell you about it in a coherent way, but they're really good dealing with these three, four clients that they have.
yeah.
So I've seen all of them, and
Mm,
like pros and cons to any approach you take. I'm not going to say my approach is the best way or anything like that. I just know what works for me
mm,
is knowing, I can communicate pretty well. I think because maybe also the podcasting skills help. I do tend to be able to explain my idea quite
right.
clearly. And then yes, I do try to also just genuinely create a connection with who I'm trying to sell.
Mm,
The clients that we have, I've been basically, I have a relationship for 15-20 years with them now,
wow.
and they rarely leave me unless they are moving out of the industry. Even if
Right.
they leave the industry, they'll make sure that the handover goes really well, or we still stay in touch with people that are not even in the industry, and I'll just still connect with them for little things. And I think those are genuine interactions.
Mm,
It's not just like a check in and seeing, can I sell something in this new company, can I do this
yeah.
or can I do that. It's just generally like, because I formed those connections, I do cherish them. And maybe it's kind of the introvert extrovert balance that you need to strike with a salesperson.
Mm,
Maybe with me, I think some extroverts are just constantly extroverted. I think I'm more of a balance. Like there's a certain aspect I can put a hat on and I can do that role. But sometimes I do crave that isolation too, that I kind of grew up with,
yeah.
where I'm just,
Yeah.
reading my books or, doing my own thing on my own time.
No, I think you've. I'm very happy with that answer because you've talked about the importance of building those long-term partnerships, and fostering genuine relations. It's not just about selling a service. It's about finding that common ground, that commonality with that person. You're not looking at them just as a customer, but as a human being, an individual. And yeah, you've built partnerships for now 20 years, which is admirable.
I had a meeting like a couple of weeks ago, and we were speaking about some project. There'd been some changes in the teams and things like that, and I was like, "Oh, I remember you. We worked on that project 2 years
Mm,
ago that went horribly wrong." And I still have nightmares thinking about that project because it was, I mean, it was not, it was like communication on their end with the client. It had nothing to do with me, but I still remember it like, oh my God, I failed at that time.
mm,
I didn't, but that's how I felt. And the client had no like recollection that that actually had happened. That it was like, the way I saw things, that they
wow.
they just remembered me from that interaction, and they thought, we have a good connection with Asim, and that's why they continued it. But it was like, that's how close I feel on delivery and like my
Right.
word and my bond, that even 2 years later I still have nightmares about messing up something that I didn't even mess up.
Very South Asian of us, right? To think like
We're good
that.
with guilt, aren't we? We're really good
So
with
much.
guilt.
But surely there must have been some bumpy rides along the way. You have your confidence, your courage, your conviction, but this is an entrepreneurial journey. Could you share some challenging moments if you're comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first company we started was BGIMR. I started with a college friend of mine, and that didn't go well. We had to
Mhm.
disband the company.
Oh,
And I think now looking back on it, I think it's I love that idea of two friends being able to create a company. That's such a cool concept, right? Like,
mm,
and if so many people do it, so many people manage it, it's great. I couldn't,
mm,
unfortunately. And I think a lot of it, I've noticed two things looking back, and this has been more than 10 years now. Two learnings that I kind of took is, A, is the I was hiding. I was hiding behind my business partner because I was feeling a bit of imposter syndrome. I thought, I
Mm,
cannot reach these rooms, I cannot have these conversations. I need
right.
somebody else to be the face, and then I can do the hard work on the back end. Uh,
Wow.
and I think that was a mistake of mine, because it was coming from an insecurity
Yeah.
inside of me. And I think that insecurity ended up hurting me. Um, and the second is, again, the power of no. I think I should have said no a lot more. And I didn't at the right time. And I think those were two of the key learnings that I took from that time. I mean, I'm not in touch with the business partner, so I don't know what learnings he took or what his point of
Mm,
view about
mm,
the whole thing is. But those were tough years, and kind of coming back, because I'm so connected with me delivering my word, my identity, and I create such a close association with my own morals when I'm doing business, that
right.
I couldn't separate the things that, okay, this was not what that I was trying to do or kind of achieve with my business. So I think those were a few rough years, and then starting again, starting a business for fresh, starting alone this time. Uh,
Mm,
that was like a couple of years that were quite bumpy. And I mean, I'm very happy that I have a very supportive wife that was like, no, let's do it now, because if we don't do it, we're never going to be able to do this again.
mm,
And I think it was the right decision, but I was very fearful of taking that decision. So I'm glad I had
yeah.
the support at the right time. And the the relaunch of the business to digital age research, it was like the old business was not even comparable to what we're doing now. It's so much more successful, it's so much more better.
Wow.
And I want to look back at that Asim of that time, is like, all of those fears you had, look at
Yeah.
where you are now. You could have just let go
Mm,
of those fears then. But I guess the failure and the challenges, that's where you really learn, right? So it's
completely
hard
agree.
to say. I wish I never went through that, because then
Mm,
you would not be where you are now.
I think like some of the toughest lessons are learned through the hardest of challenges and the hardest
Mm.
of times. Diamonds are made in the rough. Something as simple as saying no can take a very challenging experience to come out of, and then we learn to have that confidence to say no. These things just don't come naturally to some of us. So it takes that time, that heartbreak, the hard lessons to actually come and be more confident in the future. So I relate to that so much.
I think it is also something inherently South Asian, that we are not able to have
100%. 100%.
conversations. We're not
Yeah.
able to, either we get angry or we go into quiet mode, like,
Yeah.
I'm just distancing myself. But like,
Yeah.
we're very difficult to just kind of lock down, even in those tough spots, and have a tough conversation without it being insulting or, dishonorable. Honor is a big thing for us, right? And I think we've just culturally not learned to have those conversations, especially our
Yeah.
parents' generation. I feel they were incapable of doing any of those.
Mm,
And I think having that hurts us then later on in life. And
correct. Yeah.
it hurt me in my business at that time. And I've definitely learned that lesson to become a better communicator.
Mm, thank you for sharing that. It's I think for me it's quite validating to also hear that it's not just me going through these experiences, but also my other fellow South Asians who are having the same hard times and hard challenges, and then just coming out on the other end feeling more confident and successful, hopefully. Um, I want to now go into your podcast. You started podcasting before podcasting became so mainstream. You have been hosting such a hugely successful podcast that I'm a big fan of. It's called the Khandan Podcast, which is a nostalgic deep dive of the movies of three big Bollywood superstars, Amir, Salman, and Shah Rukh Khan. Could you tell me about the genesis of this podcast, which essentially was a platform for you to exercise your interest in Indian cinema?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, I grew up in Belgium, only brown boy in like a whole radius. So the only connection we had was VHS cassettes. And for me, it was
Yeah.
Amitabh Bachchan. That
Okay.
was the thing I grew up on. I was obsessed. So I just had this love for Bollywood movies. Going back to Karachi, I would just go to the video stores and just look at the posters. At that time, they used to have these albums where they would just have the cover of the movie and you could just pick which movie you wanted to, just flapping
Oh,
through
okay,
the
okay.
albums. And
Yeah.
I would just like go through the albums, just like looking at them and like weird movies. Like at that time, it was just there was no curation whatsoever, right? So you would just have, literally have everything. Um, and I grew up obsessed with movies. I then moved to Paris, moved to London and stuff like that. And I was missing my friends, to be honest. I it's it's always this part of the entrepreneurial or the international journey that now you're established in London, but you also leave a lot behind,
Yeah.
and you leave
Yeah.
your friends behind, you leave your family behind, and you miss them. And what I've found is that if you it's okay to just say, okay, just call your friend every week, but call him about what? Like literally nothing has happened in a week, right? Like whatever I've done, I've done groceries, I watched something on Netflix, but having a topic or a common interest,
Right.
that's what really brings the relationship further. So I thought,
Hmm.
I let's just have a Skype call with friends, and we ended up just talking 40 minutes about movies. And I was listening to another film podcast. I think it was called the Film Cast at that time, and
Okay.
that's how they started. And I was like, wait, if they are doing this, let's try ourselves. At
Hmm.
that time, we were just talking about everything, like every kind of movie, anything that we interested us. But the like podcasting was very rudimentary. There was no, we were barely on Apple at that time. It had literally just started, so it was really there was no sense of professionalism, or there was no brand or anything like that. But then also Twitter started, and
Hmm.
with Twitter I started just connecting with so many Bollywood minded people. And like Bollywood is just such an interesting way, because on the one side you just have these pure passionate fans that love this one actor and they won't hear anything bad about it, almost like a football team. And then you also have these very intellectual people that want to watch these artsy movies about village bicycles and poverty and things like that. And neither of those interested me necessarily. Like I was like,
Okay.
this
Yeah.
looks boring to me, and
Yeah.
that sounds stupid to me. So I want to
Mhm.
talk about movies in a different way. It's like, you know commercial movies, fun movies that everybody is watching, but talk about them in an intellectual way. And that's really where the idea for the podcast really started taking hold. Then being in London, a friend of mine was working in PR. Shout out to Ashanti. She connected me with a few stars that wanted to have their interview done. And at that time, again, I mean, Bollywood listeners know that Amir Khan is one of the actors that's kind of very forward thinking. And he had a
Yeah.
movie that he thought, this is going to connect with the diaspora, with international markets. And that's kind of the first interviews I started doing.
Mhm.
And it's from there that the Bollywood aspect took over. I'd connected with so many people on Twitter, so I knew there's actually people that listen to this, and
Right.
I enjoy talking about it. And when I had the right people that had the right audience, I was like, wait, we need to rebrand, make something new, make it more focused. And that's basically where Khandan started.
No, you've cracked your niche. And it's also the first time listening to your podcast where I was like, I did not consider myself to be a Bollywood fan per se, but I like listening to what they're talking about. I like the way they're talking about movies. Like you said, that middle ground that you found,
Mm,
that's exactly the space I also found myself most comfortable in, because I wasn't really a Bollywood fan before, but I find it a way. Listening to your podcast is a way I also remember my childhood growing up
mm,
in Nigeria, where yeah, Hindi movies was the way we connected with our ethnicity. So yeah, I would encourage my viewers and listeners to check out their podcast. It's like you're listening to your own friends talk. You're a fly in on the wall in their room. But one of the things I want to congratulate you about is that I mean, I don't know how you have the time. You're so consistent with your podcast. You have your business, but you've also now launched your new business. It's called the Culture Canvas, and
Yes.
it's very interesting. This is a new agency that is specializing in research of ethnic minorities. Um, Tell me more.
Okay, so I'm very passionate about Culture Canvas. I thought it's kind of bringing my skills and my passions together in a way that I haven't done before. In a way, I've kept all of my different buckets very separate. Market research has nothing to do with Bollywood necessarily,
Yeah.
but this is. I think just the world is kind of colliding, and I think
Okay.
we were just getting more and more demand for ethnicity focused research. I think when the Black Lives Matter movement
Yes.
started, when all of these political conversations they're having about diversity, about representation, we were getting a lot of requests. And the way I was looking at the market, I thought, nobody is really bringing in those skills that digital age research has of, really being internet focused, being having a very quantitative base to ethnic research yet. Because again, market research is quite conservative. There was still this idea, okay, if we're doing ethnic minority research, we have to have clipboards, we have to send them to Southall here in the
Hmm.
UK. I mean, in New York it's probably Jackson Heights or something like that, like these cultural hubs,
Yeah.
and you just interview people on the street. And I was like,
Right.
okay, if that's what people perceive ethnicity market research to be, I'm already doing something that's much more cutting edge than this. And I just feel that the market has not caught up. And
Hmm.
that's where we thought, Culture Canvas can be that bridge for people, because I understand it makes a lot of brands nervous. It's not an easy discussion to have, or research to, because I'll be honest, a lot of big large companies are majority white, especially in the UK,
Yeah.
especially in the US. The people that are
Hmm.
making the decision making, that are spending the money, they
Correct.
they either don't understand ethnicity, how it works, or they're fearful of it, or they think, oh no, what if we screw it up and then it goes viral and then it'll hurt our brand, which has happened with so many other companies, right?
Yeah.
um, so you need somebody that can help you and guide you and be that bridge. And I've got some very smart people with me that can also offer a bit more than only I can. And I think Culture Canvas can really give a full package and a full solution to brands that are looking to, if they're established in outside of the UK, and they're kind of looking to explore the ethnicity market, which is just going to get bigger and bigger, and it's not even clear ethnicities. Like, what is my daughter going to be? She's half Pakistani, she's half French. In 15 years, which ethnicity is she going to be? She
Correct.
watches
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
she loves watching Bollywood, but
Mhm.
she's not Pakistani, like like a native born Pakistani
Correct.
either.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's going to be happen. There's mixtures of culture of Indian and Nigerian, and all of these things are Mexican and this and that. All of this is happening. And
Mm.
the thing is with people that are from an ethnicity background, they work really hard. They're usually very educated. They want to spend money. They worked really hard. They want to play hard. And even you can notice this when you're in the UK. When you go to a Bollywood screening, everybody has bought snacks,
Yeah.
everybody has bought drinks. That idea of, oh, they're still bringing their Tupperware, they're opening
Oh
their
my God.
samosa,
Yeah. Yeah.
doesn't
No.
exist here. They're having a slushy, a hot dog, and tacos, all of it together. I was like, dude, like, but they are
Yeah.
spending money, and that's why a brand like Cineworld is investing in Bollywood movies. And I think
Mm.
that's just the same thing for, be it international money transfer to tourism sector. All of these people, they need to understand how to speak to ethnic minorities. And again, if you don't do it now, there's enough brands that are already doing it. So if you don't do it now, you will fall behind, and you'll lose a whole sector of the market. And I think that's where Culture Canvas wants to kind of find that space and help brands out.
Fascinating, and I think very timely as well, because I read this piece of research that within organizations, uh, the minorities for whom the D&I projects or campaigns are launched are actually the most unsatisfied with those campaigns, because there clearly is a disconnect here.
Mm.
And you do need research to help you understand what is it that your employees or your customers want from your organization, and how do you tailor make solutions for them. So I feel like thanking you for launching that business and introducing that service in the market.
Funnily enough, I see this a lot when we're doing political polling,
Hmm.
because we are speaking with certain demographics that are a minority in a country, and a lot of times those results will then be used as a weapon against that same minority. So after a while, that minorities, why should we engage
Yeah.
with this conversation even more if it ends up hurting us every time?
So true. Yeah.
And they lose trust in the person speaking to you, and the brands have also lost trust. So that's where I think the trust component is very important, and I think that's where we want to place Culture Canvas,
Hmm.
a kind of a trustworthy brand for people that are being interviewed and the people that want to do the interview. And I think it just puts me in a unique position where not everybody has the skill set or the experience that we at Culture Canvas have.
I wish you the best of luck with this new venture of yours, and I think you are ahead of the market at this point. But I hope business thrives for you. I want to come down to my last question now. You've done 230 episodes of Kandan episode. You've launched a new business. You have your old business, Digital Age Research. You are a doting dad to a really wonderful daughter. You're a true family man. You nurture beautiful friendships. How do you make things happen, Asim?
um, I mean, no man is an island. I don't think it's not like an individual person that can make all of this happen. It's
Mm.
with the support system you have, be it your partner or your wife or your
Yeah.
family and their blessings and their prayers. I think that's like, a large part of it. I think
Mm.
I've seen really hardworking, smart people fail, and I've seen
Mm.
lazy people become millionaires. I've seen both of it. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is just luck and blessings and things like that. I also just think that thinking about the priorities, especially with the family, I think they need, for me, they're my first priority. All of those things that I do, I really enjoy, and they're kind of a
Right.
nice break from things. But I think I think this was one of those things where when I was starting my business, I was like, okay, I'm the owner, I'm the managing director, everything is me, but I'll never be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. But I feel I have the skills, or I could do this, or I could do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But then I would also not be able to make my daughter's lunches. I would not be. Yesterday, she had taekwondo, and the class stopped 10 minutes earlier. She texted me. I said, "Beta, I'll be there in 5 minutes." I was
Oh,
like so
okay.
happy I could do that,
Yeah.
and how many people can do that? How many dads can do that? How many dads can? A lot of things. A lot of times I hear from dads is like, oh, my daughter doesn't, or my son doesn't speak my language. They speak my
Mm.
wife's
Mm.
language. And my honest reaction is that you didn't put in the effort. You just left all of that to your wife, and now you're regretting that nobody speaks in your language. And I think those were very clear decisions I made, that this is my priority, and then
Yeah.
everything kind of feeds into it. And you need to have a successful business to have a happy family life, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Because you want to give them the experiences,
Yeah.
you got to give them everything you have, and you also need your hobbies or your friendships. And that's where, in a way, the podcast comes in, that I can have these great friendships with not only my co-hosts but with my listeners. That is
True.
such a big
Yeah.
strength. And then when you come back to your family unit, you're invigorated, you're a happy
Yeah.
person. Especially, I think, for men, it's very hard for us to just make friends. Like, after an
Mm.
age, we're terrible at them, just generally. And I think for me, that's been a good thing, that I can still, with the podcast, create these new friendships. And then
Yeah.
the third part is just being honest and true to yourself. Like,
Mm.
try to be a good person. Try to
Yeah.
not cheat people, try to not tell lies, try to not get one over somebody. I think I try to do that as
Mm.
much as I can. I think the rest kind of just naturally
falls
follows
into
out of that.
place.
Yeah, it does.
No, thank you for bringing out the importance of being a good person, because I don't think we talk about that too much. We talk about a lot of other skills, but I agree with you. The bedrock of it, just be a good person. It doesn't cost anything. So, thank you, Asim, for sharing the last 1 hour with me. It's been, like you said, invigorating. And I've learned so much from you. This is what I like about you. You're not just about your podcast, about your business. You find ways to tie everything in so beautifully together in a way that makes sense for you. So thank you. I will keep listening to your podcast. I wish your businesses the best. And here's to nurturing a lifelong friendship. Thank you.
Thank you, Anisha. Thanks for having me on. This was so wonderful, and it's always just great to talk to you anyway. And I'm so happy you're doing this podcast, and I'm also just happy that you're reaching an audience that doesn't always have listen to these conversations or listen to podcasts. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
Having that voice. You're doing good.
Thank you, Asim. Means a lot coming from you. Take care.
And that's today's show. If you like this conversation, please give me a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening to your podcast.